Number 5. Area 51, Nevada. Starting out our list, we have the most obvious entry. In the American state of Nevada, you will find no shortage of places to go on vacation. Despite being a desert, you will find locations like the Hoover Dam, Red Rock Canyon, and of course, the various casinos and attractions in Las Vegas. Of course, a location that you will not find yourself getting into is the military base located on the salt flats of Groom Lake, which is colloquially known as Area 51. For years, Area 51 has been the subject of conspiracy theories involving everything from government testing to UFO activity. Adding to its mystique is the fact that the US government wouldn't even officially acknowledge that it existed until 2013. Its official use is apparently the testing of experimental aircraft, but the level of security at the base is extremely high, even for a government base. Employees of Area 51 are flown in on a private airline known as Janet Airlines, with Janet being an acronym that stands for just another non-existent terminal. Some former employees have reported getting paid through private companies that they have no involvement with in order to avoid a paper trail linking them to the base. Some theories about the purpose of Area 51 include it being used to develop energy weapons for the Strategic Defense Initiative, to develop time travel technology, and most infamously, for studying, storing, and reverse engineering the remains of crashed alien ships, including those that were found at the Roswell crash site. As it is a closed-off and secret government facility, tourists are of course not allowed to get into the site, with signs around the perimeter promising prosecution and possibly even deadly force against trespassers. Of course, this hasn't stopped alien enthusiasts from making the journey to Nevada to see the number of Area 51 and alien-adjacent attractions, such as bus tours of the extraterrestrial highway, the Black Mailbox, and the outskirts of this secret government facility. Number 4. The Princess Theatre, Alberta. In the Canadian city of Edmonton, Alberta, there is no shortage of movie theaters, with multiple malls housing multiple multiplexes, enabling local cinema lovers to watch the latest in entertainment. However, for many years, the crown jewel for movie lovers in Edmonton was not the Cineplex in West Edmonton Mall, or even the Garneau Theatre, which shows independent and classic films. No, for many years, the most classic of the theaters was the Princess Theatre on White Avenue. Built in 1914 for a then staggering $75,000, this three-story single-screen theater would show moving pictures, concerts, and vaudeville acts, while also having a basement billiards parlor for those not interested in the shows. The theater was known for implementing extremely novel and modern elements, such as a fireproof projection room, an electric time projection clock, an electronic ticketing machine, forced air ventilation, and even refrigerated fountain beverages. The theater was soon drawn into economic hardship and was forced to construct rental apartments on the upper and lower floors. One of these apartment renters was soon met with a tragic and disturbing end. According to local legend, an engaged woman lived in one of the upper apartments, but mere days before she was due to be wed, she was scorned by her fiancé. She was found hanging from the rafters while dressed in her wedding dress. In the years that followed, employees and patrons of the princess reported seeing a ghostly woman wearing a white dress who would suddenly appear and disappear, ascending the theater's grand staircase, wandering its ornate gold-leafed halls, or even hovering over the projection room. The princess was a staple for local cinema lovers, as well as fans of the paranormal for decades. But if you were interested in taking in a show or catching a glimpse of the ghostly bride, you may have missed your window, as the theater closed its doors after 108 years of operation in mid-2022. No new owners or plans for the historical theater have been announced, and the doors remained locked to the public, with only the ghosts still residing inside of this historic building. Number 3. Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center, Virginia. In a world that seems to constantly be on the brink of disaster, it is comforting to know that the US government has a safe location where the elite and powerful will be safe from destruction they most likely caused. Such is the purpose of the US Department of Homeland Security operated base located near Bluemont, Virginia. The Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center, otherwise known as the High Point Special Facility, has been in operation since the late 1800s, when it was used as a simple weather station. In 1928, the observatory building became President Calvin Coolidge's summer White House, before being used as a civilian public service facility where conscientious objectors could serve the government during World War II without having to go into conflict. In 1959, an underground facility was completed and designated Area B. The other buildings that were referred to as Area A became training facilities for the Federal Emergency Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Around this time, it became a relocation site for high-level civilian and military officials in the event of a national disaster, such as an attack or massive natural disaster. It plays a major role in many of the United States government's contingency plans for maintaining the continuity of government. It has a high-frequency radio system, which connects it to most federal public safety agencies, which allows the president to access and use the emergency alert system so that they can broadcast emergency alerts or warnings. An example of its use was on September 11th, 2001, when the majority of congressional leadership were taken from Washington by helicopter and evacuated to Mount Weather. The National Art Gallery has also developed a program that would have the country's most valuable paintings helicoptered over to the facility in the event of an attack, in order to make sure important cultural pieces are preserved in the event of an attack that would otherwise destroy them. Obviously, this site is off limits to all but the most high level of people, and it is not open for tourists. But if you are nearby and see a large group of frantic-looking officials arriving by helicopter, or you see a message on TV from the president being broadcast from this facility, be very afraid, as it means that something terrifying and horrible has or is about to occur. Number 2. Boblo Island Amusement Park, Ontario. North America has no shortage of amusement parks for families and thrill seekers alike to visit. The Canadian province of Ontario has several to choose from, including Canada's Wonderland, Great Wolf Lodge, and Splashdown Niagara. One theme park that you won't be able to buy a ticket for, however, is the Boblo Island Amusement Park, located on the island of Bois Blanc, just above the mouth of the Detroit River. The park was opened in 1898 and used a ferry system to service guests from Ontario and Detroit and bring them to the island, where they had a variety of attractions to keep them occupied and having fun. Some of these included the Falling Star, a log flume, a theater, a sky tower, a Ferris wheel, a zoo, a carousel, and a dance hall, financed by Henry Ford himself. It also had 3 roller coasters: the Screamer, the Nightmare, and the Sky Streak. It also had Boblo's scoot boats, which were essentially aquatic bumper cars. The park operated for many years before eventually closing down for financial reasons in late 1993. There are still ferries that operate in order to get island residents on and off the island, but the now abandoned amusement park has been declared off limits by the property owners. Of course, the dilapidated carousel building, dance pavilion, and sky tower have since proven to be too appealing for urban explorers to keep away from, and the eerie overgrown site still sees a variety of visitors. Like any good amusement park, it of course has a reputation for being haunted by a variety of ghosts. My personal favorite of the ghost stories is the story of Smiley the Magician. Back when the theater still operated and showed a variety of different performers, one of the most consistently booked performers of the 30s and 40s was a magician named Smiley Smilovich. Smiley was an old-school magician who had trained with Houdini in the late 20s and was known for his seemingly death-defying tricks. One of his most famous tricks was a metamorphosis trick, where he would put a trunk on stage, climb into it, lock it, and then have the trunk set on fire. He would escape through a trap door, the trunk would burn away, revealing that he had escaped, and the crowd would go wild. One day he was doing this trick as usual, but when he locked himself in the trunk, he had a heart attack and died. The trunk was set on fire, and the audience was left in terror as Smiley's body burned in front of them. Ever since then, Smiley's ghost would apparently haunt the theater, being sighted watching shows that were performed there, showing a special interest in magic shows. In the years since the park's closure, the occasional rumor of the magician being spotted has come up from the various urban explorers checking out the overgrown buildings. Would you ever be brave enough to explore Boblo Island Amusement Park? And if you did, would you be on the lookout for spectral magicians? Number 1. North Brother Island, New York. The North Brother Island is one of 2 small islands located in the East River of New York City. The island remained uninhabited until 1885, with the only trace of humanity being a small lighthouse that was erected in 1869. The island began seeing more use in 1885 when the Riverside Smallpox Hospital moved from Roosevelt Island to North Brother, when their mission expanded to treating and isolating victims of other quarantinable diseases such as typhoid, tuberculosis, and especially polio. In 1904, a steamship called the General Slocum was set ablaze, and over 1,000 people perished, either from the fire or from drowning while trying to escape, and ended up washing ashore on the island. One of the most famous residents at the hospital was Mary Mallon, otherwise known as Typhoid Mary, who was confined on the island for 20 years until her death in 1938, after having been declared a public health menace for infecting between 51 and 122 people while working as a cook. As public health health measures like vaccines began to be adopted in the 30s and 40s, the need for a quarantine hospital lessened to the point where the hospital was closed. It was converted into housing for war veterans who were going to school in the city following World War II, before being converted into a rehabilitation facility for young people suffering from substance abuse issues. But it was closed in 1963 due to the cost of upkeep and the widespread corruption of the staff. In the years since, it was considered for a variety of purposes, including housing for the homeless and an extension of the jail at Rikers Island. But the danger of the unmarked manholes and the advanced dilapidation of the buildings, which are mostly collapsed and overrun by poison ivy, resulted in such ideas being abandoned. It was eventually decided that the site would serve as a bird sanctuary for herons and other wading shorebirds. Although many of the original 25 buildings are still standing in some shape or form, it has been made off limits to the public and is only available for supervised visits for those intending to go ashore for, quote, compelling academic and scientific purposes. With its history of confinement and death, perhaps it is best that this site has been deemed unfit for public visitation, although the history of the island is indeed compelling.
In at number 5 we have Riverdale Road. Riverdale Road is an 11-mile road connecting Thornton and Brighton and is said to be the subject of several myths and legends, with many folks calling it one of the most haunted places in the entire world. One legend states that the road is quite literally the gates to hell. So there are in fact gates on Riverdale Road made of rusty iron, however it's the story behind them which is quite terrifying. People are said to visit these gates in hopes of seeing the Lady in White. According to legend, the man who built the gates lost his mind, and when he was finished, he burned down his entire home with his family asleep inside. Now visitors to the road and gates often report seeing the woman in white. She is said to be the wife burned in her home who was now searching the streets for her children and even her husband. Another legend is that you may very well get chased by some ghostly joggers. There are countless accidents that happen on Riverdale Road, especially involving pedestrians who decide to go on a run down the busy road. One jogger was reportedly hit while out for a run one day, and it is now said that his ghostly spirit now haunts the road. Another famous legend involving Riverdale Road is that of the bloody handprints. According to locals, a spirit is said to dwell on Riverdale Road, the spirit of a young boy. While on his way home he was supposedly struck by a car. Now his spirit paces the streets, smearing handprints on every street sign as he walks by. In at number 4 we have Boy Scout Lane. Boy Scout Lane is an isolated road located in Wisconsin. Over the years, dozens of ghost stories have become associated with the road, including the fictional deaths of a troop of Boy Scouts. The road was named Boy Scout Lane simply because the land was once owned by the Boy Scouts of America, who planned to use it to build scout camps, although this was never constructed, with the land remaining woodland. According to local legend, the road is named for a troop of Boy Scouts who were killed while on a camping trip in the 1950s or 1960s. In some variations, the murderer is the troop's scoutmaster. In others, it is said to be their bus driver, while in other tellings of the story, the group of scouts leave their camp during the night and accidentally drop their lantern, resulting in the forest fire that kills the entire troop. Stories circulated with visitors supposedly feeling a strong sense of foreboding or being watched, as well as the sound of footsteps or breaking branches in the surrounding area. On top of that, others have reported seeing red or white lights, sometimes described as swinging lanterns or flashlight beams, ghostly buses or figures, and even childlike handprints on cars stopped in or driven through the area. Coming in at number 3 we have Clinton Road. Clinton Road is located in New Jersey, with the road running in a north-south direction beginning at Route 23 near Newfoundland. The road itself has gained notoriety over the years due to it being rife with paranormal occurrences and unexplainable phenomenon. Some of these include gatherings of witches, Satanists, and the KKK. It is also said that professional killers dispose of bodies in the woods surrounding Clinton Road. One legend is said about the Ghost Boy Bridge. According to locals, if you put a quarter in the middle of the road where the yellow line is, at one of the bridges over Clinton Brook near the reservoir, at midnight it will supposedly be promptly returned by the ghost of a boy who drowned while swimming below or had fallen in while sitting on the edge of the bridge. Besides the Ghost Boy, there have been other reports of ghosts. One person claims to have seen a ghost Camaro driven by a girl who supposedly died in a car crash in 1988. Another claims to have encountered 2 park rangers one night while camping near Terrace Pond. They were said to be 2 rangers who had died on the job in 1939. On top of that, according to the Travel Channel show Most Terrifying Places in America 2, phantom vehicles such as pickup trucks or even floating headlights not attached to any vehicle supposedly appear from nowhere in the middle of the night and chase drivers to the end of the road and then vanish into thin air. Coming in at number 2 we have Route 2A. Maine seems to be a stomping ground for ghostly activity, but no place seems to be more haunted than Route 2A, a rural section in the northern part of Maine. This stretch of road runs through Haynesville Woods, which is located near the town of the same name. Now, prior to the construction of Interstate 95, Route 2A was the most utilized road by truck drivers hauling potatoes out of Maine. It was also said to be incredibly treacherous in the winter months, with one turn that is nearly 90 degrees. Some may in fact be familiar with the song A Tombstone Every Mile. This was infamously written about Route 2A and is a reference to the many fatal accidents that have occurred on the road. Given the sheer amount of tragedies that have occurred on the road, it comes as no surprise that it now has a haunted history. One of the most notable stories coming from drivers on the deadly road discuss that of a young woman in need of help. She is said to appear seemingly out of nowhere and is in distress. Drivers report pulling over to help the woman and offer her a ride, which she is said to accept. While in the car, drivers say they feel uneasy and that there is a distinct chill in the air around them. As the car begins to near the end of the road, the woman disappears completely. Locals say that this is the ghost of a newlywed bride who was involved in a car accident with her husband in the same woods. The husband died immediately, but the woman was able to escape the car. However, while struggling down the street, she met her end by freezing to death on the side of Route 2A. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Archer Avenue. Sometimes referred to as Archer Road, this is a place outside of Chicago that is rumored to be incredibly haunted. The avenue was originally made famous by Finley Peter Dunne in his books and sketches about the fictional saloon keeper Mr. Dooley. However, it has become more infamous over time due to purportedly being haunted by Resurrection Mary, a vanishing hitchhiker. Resurrection Mary is well known around the Chicago area and has become a folklore of sorts that is known throughout many cultures. The legend itself is based outside of Resurrection Cemetery in Justice, Illinois, with Mary considered to be one of Chicago's most famous ghosts. The story goes that Mary had spent the evening dancing with her boyfriend at the O. Henry Ballroom. However, at some point during the night, the couple got into an argument, resulting in Mary storming out. She left the ballroom and began to walk up Archer Avenue. She hadn't gotten very far when a truck struck and killed her, with the driver fleeing the scene. Her parents buried her in Resurrection Cemetery, wearing a white dancing dress and matching shoes. Now, since the 1930s, several people driving along Archer Avenue have claimed to have picked up a young female hitchhiker. They say that the woman was dressed in a white party dress and had blonde hair and blue eyes. When the driver's near the cemetery, the young woman supposedly asks to be let out, whereupon she disappears altogether back into the cemetery. Over the years, many researchers have attempted to link Resurrection Mary to one of the many thousands of graves in Resurrection Cemetery. One of the particular focuses was on Mary Bregovy, a woman who died in 1934 after being involved in a car accident in downtown Chicago.
In 5th place, we have Preston Castle, also known as the Preston School of Industry in Ione. Opening in 1894 and named after state senator at the time, Edward Myers Prestonas, it was presented as an alternative to juvie, a place to send troubled boys to learn a new trade and avoid incarceration. To the general public, it quickly became known as the best reform school of its kind, where boys could grow their own food, raise livestock, learn farming trades and skills for self-preservation in the real world. Known as wards, minors under guardianship of the state, but not necessarily juvenile offenders, many boys passed from severe illnesses like tuberculosis or were simply killed by guards for reasons unknown. Records show that the initiation to the facility involved swimming through a pool filled with lye, and common discipline methods included starvation, isolation, public paddling, and lashings. A mass grave on the property contains at least 23 bodies of wards that were sent to be rehabilitated. Head housekeeper of the facility, Anna Corbin, was brutally beaten to death on February 23rd of 1950. Various students and members of the staff were suspects in her passing, but it remains unsolved. Visitors to the now landmark have reported meeting her spirit, which roams around the grounds with all the students that couldn't pass over. Physical representations of spirits at this location have included multiple slamming doors, falling objects, disembodied voices, and the feeling of being touched by a cold hand. All common pranks that are meant to terrorize and discombobulate. In 4th place, we have the Los Coches Adobe in Soledad. Before the establishment even broke ground, back when the area was used primarily for mining, over 30 miners perished in a soil collapse, and visitors to the area have since reported hearing their cries for help from the now abandoned mine shaft, while feeling pressure on their chest and back as if they were being buried alive. The adobe itself is located on the side of Highway 101. the building being originally built in 1843 to be used as lodging for workers in the area. Between 1872 and 1886, Soledad served as the terminal station for the railway that connected to San Francisco. Legend says that the owner of the inn was responsible for ending the lives of multiple folks who stayed there, especially near the end of the inn being in use, by entering the rooms as they slept and slitting their throats before stealing their riches in an attempt to keep the inn, well, afloat. Other spirits spotted on the property include, but are not limited to, a man hanging from a tree, swaying in the wind, and a woman sitting while holding a pointer stick, with her mouth moving as if she's yelling at whoever spots her. It is reported that the wall between the living and the dead is so thin here that people who have stayed in recent history reported having the walls and surroundings inside of the building changed them to match the settings of the once deadly inn before their very eyes. Those who have opted to go so far as to stay the night have often woken up with handprints on their chest or throat, a remnant of what came before. In third place, time to visit the Bodie State Historic Park. Formerly a genuine gold mining town located east of the Sierra Nevada mountain range in Mono County, California, and now a national landmark, it is known as one of the best preserved ghost towns in the world. It is named after W.S. Bodie, first name unknown, but rumored to be either William or Waterman, discovered gold in 1859 in an area now known as Brody Bluff. He tragically passed in a snowstorm that same winter and was never present for what came to be. According to pioneer Judge McClinton, the district's name was changed from the proper spelling of B-O-D-E-Y to B-O-D-Y, body, and then a few other phonetic variations to eventually become B-O-D-I-E after a painter in the nearby boomtown of Aurora lettered a sign as such. You know, an accidental typo that stuck through history. While the output from the mine is largely insignificant in terms of mining history, the violence and early endings to lives tell a different story. A particularly harsh winter between 1878 and 1879 claimed hundreds of lives, with many others perishing from fallen timber and explosions underground. Bodie as a town grew to have a reputation for violence and lawlessness, and unlike other mining camps at the time, killings were daily events. Robberies, stage holdups, and fights happened at such a frequency that no complete record could be kept. Reverend F.M. Warrington would describe the area in 1881 as a sea of sin lashed by the tempests of lust and passion. The first of 4 mysterious fires tore through the business district in 1892, the next destroying the town mill in 1912, and yet another destroying the same mill again in 1898. The last of the unknown fires demolished most of what was left of the now ghost town in 1932, taking way too many lives too soon in the process. When the last producing mine shut down after 1945, very few people were left living in what was left of the town, and all eventually met untimely ends. One man shot his wife unprompted, and 3 other men from the town took it upon themselves to take his life for that act. According to historians, the ghost of that man would visit the 3 men after his passing, shaking his fist and appearing as if he was cursing them out. Those men soon died of mysterious diseases and illnesses. Visitors to the area have reported meeting spirits that leave them feeling suffocated, seeing doors open and close on their own, and rocking chairs that may or may not have a menacing older lady staring them down, or even the empty chair rocking on its own. Nowadays, Bodie may be a tourist destination, but if you remove anything from the land, even so little as a pebble, you'll be cursed with remorse and tragedy. The park keeps a logbook of all letters and items returned to them, with each thief writing an apology note to Brody for what was taken. The curse is upheld by the ghosts of residents past who guard against thieves and protect the town's treasures. Coming in second place, we have the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles, which was renamed to the Stay on Main in 2011. Cited as one of the inspirations for American Horror Story, Hotel, its history includes multiple deaths by a single hand and more unexplainable horrors. The first documented end of life at the Cecil occurred on the evening of January 22, 1927, when Percy Ormond Cook, age 52 at the time, shot himself in the head while inside his hotel room after spending over $40,000 in an attempt to woo back his estranged wife and an attempt to buy happiness. The next death that was reported was in 1931 when a guest, W.K. Norton, passed in his room after taking poison capsules. Too many lives to list were self-taken at the height of the Great Depression in the 40s and 50s. In 1947, it was claimed that Elizabeth Short, otherwise known as the Black Dahlia, was spotted at the hotel days before her gruesome and unsolved end of time. On the topic of unsolved deaths, we move ahead to 1964 when a retired telemarketer named Pigeon Goldie Osgood, who had been a well-known long-term resident at the hotel, was found brutally ended in her room, with said room having been ransacked. In the 1980s, the hotel was home for a few weeks to repeated ender of lives Richard Ramirez, nicknamed the Night Stalker. It's assumed that he engaged in most, if not all, of his killing spree while staying there, being convicted of 13 deaths total in 1989. A copycat of his, Jack Unterweger, stayed at the Cecil in 1991 and was responsible for the strangulation and death of at least 3 women of the night. The most recent death reported took place in 2013 when surveillance footage of Canadian student Elisa Lam behaving erratically in the hotel's elevator went viral. The video depicts Lam repeatedly pressing the elevator's buttons, walking in and out of the elevator, and was recorded shortly before her disappearance. After 19 days of being missing, her naked body was discovered in a water supply cistern on the hotel roof, following complaints from guests of odd-tasting water and low pressure. And finally, in first place, we have the famed Winchester Mystery House in San Jose. It all began in 1881 when the passing of Sarah Winchester's mother, father-in-law, and husband William Winchester of the famed Winchester Repeating Arms Company passed away in quick succession, leaving her with a very large inheritance, assumed to be around $20 million, which would amount to roughly $561.6 million today, and a 50% stake in the company, making her one of the wealthiest women at the time. After living in Connecticut for the majority of her life, a combination of an arthritis diagnosis and meeting with a medium convinced her to start a new life in California. She believed her family to be cursed by victims of the Winchester rifle, and began construction on what was originally a 2-story, 8-room farmhouse, which she purchased in 1886. She and her late husband shared an interest in architecture, and after dismissing all of the architects she originally met with, decided to do all of the home planning herself. She was known to rebuild and abandon construction if anything didn't meet her expectations, which resulted in a maze-like design. It is believed that said maze-like design was mainly intended to confuse and keep spirits from harming her and what was left of her family. According to paranormal investigators Mary Jo Ignafo and Joe Nickel, the bell tower built on the property was used to summon spirits, and Sarah was known to throw lavish parties for the beings she feared in an attempt to please them. It was reported in the San Jose News in 1897 that a 7-story tower was torn down and rebuilt 16 times. As a result of her expansions, there are walled-off exterior windows and doors that lead to nowhere, along with staircases that end suddenly, and as the house grew in size, up to 5 additional levels were added to the home. When the 1906 San Francisco earthquake hit, the damage to the home was quite extensive. The 7-story tower and most of the chimneys collapsed. An entire wing was destroyed, along with the 3rd and 4th story additions, and pipes that were protruding from what were once window boxes. Before the earthquake, the house is believed to have had 500 rooms, and at this time of Sarah's passing in 1922, the house had 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 47 stairways, 47 fireplaces, 13 bathrooms, and 6 kitchens. Visitors to the house today have reported multiple instances of experiencing cold spots, footsteps, cooking smells, odd sounds, whispering, doors and windows slamming, and feelings of being watched.
Number 5. Hockomock Swamp. Already sounds pretty scary in itself. Something about swamps, you know what I mean? During the 17th century, the Hockomock Swamp was used as a fortress by the Wampanoag people, the predominant band of natives in the area, against invasion by the early British settlers. It played a landscape role in King Philip's War as a strategic base of which to launch assaults with nearby English settlements. During the 18th and 19th centuries, settlers deemed the swamp to be useless, barren land, and it didn't really do much besides sit there and just kind of take up space. They attempted to drain it and convert it into a profitable farmland, however, nothing really grew. The natives of the region placed a much higher value on the swamp, however, for centuries. The first people had relied on hunting food there, riddled with fauna, and the swamp had gained an important legend and folklore among them as being a place where many things meet. They named it Hockomock, the Algonquin term meaning place where spirits dwell, and that's exactly what people say they do. Dwell there. What makes this swamp so haunted is the different purposes it was used for. A cesspool for bones of the fallen. Some places are just more susceptible to violence and death over the years, and that reputation of spirits lingering is what's so heavy and cold about this location. Much of the swamp served a dual purpose as a sacred burial ground as well. The Hockomock is occasionally referred to as the home of the Hobomok. The Wampanoag people worshipped and feared Hobomok, the chief deity of death and disease. Hobomok, composed of human souls of the dead, was known to congregate in areas like the Hockomock Swamp. Thus the term and lore stuck. Yep, just a giant mud monster swallowing souls. Charming. There are many stories and legends that have become associated with this swamp and are even connected to the number 1 on my list. It remains a place of mystery and fear and apparently good frog catching. Number 4. Lowell Cemetery. Lowell Cemetery is a cemetery located in Lowell, Massachusetts. Founded in 1841 and located on the banks of the Concord River, the cemetery is one of the oldest garden cemeteries in the country, making it a perfect place for violence and an eternity of soul searching. Many of Lowell's wealthy industrialists are buried here under lavish Victorian tombstones. Visitors have claimed that this is one of Massachusetts' most haunted cemeteries. What makes a haunted cemetery more haunted than another haunted cemetery, you know? Is there like a competition or like a quota or something? Just gotta keep the numbers up. What is it? I feel like every local claims their cemetery is the oldest and most haunted, and this brings me to our fair maiden here, the mysterious witch, Bonnie. A popular meeting place amongst the local teens at night for some scares and some screams, the statue of a woman with her arms outstretched on a rectangular tomb, her hands clutching a veil that falls down behind her body as though it were a cloak caught in the wind. Her eyes lay cold, staring at the heavens. Under her left eye, a black tear. Paranormal researchers have claimed that the statue holds more of an electromagnetic current, and strange things can be seen in front and around the statue, making it seem like it's moving from time to time. Creepy. There is local lore that if you leave a coin or ribbon on the statue, then you'll get good luck, and in return, if you steal or take the items from the statue, the haunting whispers of bad karma will follow. Although research shows that this gravesite holds no actual sinister history, the ghostly sightings surrounding it are a hotspot within the cemetery. I bet at night under the moonlight this woman could be very terrifying. Number 3. Boston Common. Most common fact about the Common: one of the most haunted places in Boston. That rhymed really weird, didn't it? If you're out for a walk and feel the need to brush up on your American history, then you can be sure to either see the ladies by the trees or the Patriot men rushing the battlefront. Well, what's left behind from them at least. The Boston Common had a multi-purpose identity through the centuries. Originally as a farm, and then trading grounds for the British and American military, the Common was used as a camp during the American Revolutionary War. 20 minutes to load these old muskets and a lot of people dying. It was also used for public hangings up until 1817, most of which were from the large oaks, which were eventually all replaced with gallows in 1769. These grounds held weight during the witch trials and made a perfect open concept park that a spectacle could be enjoyed at. These people were sick. This place has seen its fair share of violence. The 350-year-old park is full of graves, ghosts, and gallows. It's almost impossible to know just how many bodies lay underneath the park, like a cesspool of unmarked graves from many different eras. Most buried here were low class, sick, or died in battle. Oh, and of course were hanged in front of the public. This place is home to many dark shadows, cold spots, and the occasional smell of gunpowder. Next time you're in Boston, swing by one of America's oldest and fullest cemeteries and see if you can see anything for yourself. Number 2. The Danvers State Hospital. The Danvers State Hospital, or also known as the Danvers State Insane Asylum, was a psychiatric hospital located in Danvers, Massachusetts. It was built in 1874 and opened in 1878 on the isolated site in rural Massachusetts, which, fun fact, the judge who preceded the Salem witch trials lived on. That's bad karma already, isn't it? Despite being included in the National Registry for Historical Places in 1984, the majority of the building was demolished in 2007. At a cost of $1.5 million at the time, the hospital originally consisted of 2 main center buildings with housing for the administration, with 4 radiating wings on each side. The outermost wards were reserved for the most hostile patients. This was a prominent location where medications were being tested by the government, and the favored lobotomy was being fleshed out. When shock therapy failed to control the population, lobotomies started, and in 1939 the population of the hospital swelled to almost over 2,400 patients. A total of 278 people died at the hospital that same year. Neurology experts often call Danvers the birthplace of the prefrontal lobotomy. Ouch. Visitors to the hospital during these years reported lobotomy patients wandering around staring blankly at nothing, unaware of who they were or what they were doing. Large budget cuts in the 60s played a major role in the progression of closing the Danvers State Hospital, and with nicknames like Hell Hill Hospital and Lunatic Asylum, the hospital began slowly closing its facilities by 1985. The original hospital wards were closed and abandoned soon after. During the 80s, reports began to filter out of the hospital about missing teenage patients. The stories of ghostly figures and shadows in the windows were thriving. Are the ghosts of the lobotomized patients still aimlessly walking the realms of this now demolished hospital? What do you think? And number 1, the Bridgewater Triangle. Just a couple miles south of Boston is one of the most interesting and bizarre places in Massachusetts. I chose this as the number 1 spot due to not only the paranormal ghostly figures that have been seen across the vast plains, but 200 miles of connected weird events. that will definitely catch our attention. It's named from the triangle shape. The paranormal events and phenomenon that occurs within these mapped lines includes as many as orbs, UFOs, Bigfoots, fairies, skinwalkers, alien hybrids, you name it, it's there. Well, possibly there. The towns of Raynham, Brockton, Norton, and Taunton are all subject to a universal head scratcher. In the 70s there of course was a surge of UFO witnesses, at the same time several Bigfoot. Huh, that's interesting. Massachusetts just keeps getting stranger and stranger, doesn't it? Huge humanoid creatures, motherships, and landed UFOs have also been spotted and reported within this 200 square foot mile radius. Do you think this place is like a Skinwalker Ranch type of place? Maybe some motherships are trying to just reconnect with the Wi-Fi upstairs? I don't know. Whatever it is, the Bridgewater Triangle has been home to numerous documentaries and folklore and attracts spooky goers each year with its variety of paranormal activity.
Number 5 on this list is the Zach Bagans Haunted Museum. Most haunted museums, or anything like that, are all kind of phony and corny. This one though, this isn't for the faint of heart. Thrillist says when Zach Bagans opened the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas, he did his homework and picked the creepiest place possible. The attraction is inside an old Victorian home that dates back to 1938. It was owned by a family haunted by a child who died due to surgical complications. Later, when the home was vacant, intruders broke in and held satanic rituals in the basement. Adult actress Jenna Jameson actually grew up in the house and swears the stories are true, but doesn't like to talk about it too much. Today, you can take a guided tour of the Haunted Museum, frequently used as a filming location for Bagans' ghost adventures on the Travel Channel and Discovery Plus. The museum packs a lot into one visit with more than 30 rooms. Things start off relatively tame with a look at spooky artifacts and a gambling parlor and a closet full of creepy dolls. But the pace picks up with exhibits dedicated to notorious serial killers, an up-close look at a Volkswagen van used as a death machine by Jack Kevorkian, and a haunted hallway of killer clowns. It's best not to give away too many spoilers, but at one point you'll face an item described as the most haunted object in the whole world. You will even get to explore the basement at some point, which many people believe to still be extremely haunted. You gotta wonder why the heck so many horrible things happened here. Haunted child, satanic rituals, other questionable things that have probably not been leaked to the public. I guess it makes sense to have a haunted museum here, but obviously bringing in all of these other haunted items has just further promoted paranormal energy, and now this is clearly a hotspot for spirits and ghosts alike. Only go to this museum if you can handle a good scare. Number 4 on this list is Rhyolite Ghost Town. This abandoned town is full of scary spirits, ghouls, and maybe a lot more. Thrillist says, take a short road trip out of Las Vegas and spend the afternoon exploring the ruins of Rhyolite, one of the most compelling ghost towns in the country. A hub of mining activity during the gold rush, the town was quickly abandoned when the boom went bust following the Panic of 1907. Wander around and you'll see the scattered remains of a bank, jail, and train depot. The landscape looks more like a nuclear war zone than a ghost town, but just as sinister and perhaps still home to the spirits who once lived there many years ago. We have talked a ton about ghost towns on this channel before. Something about ghost towns seems to attract spirits. Maybe like the sudden absence of people leaves a void that these spirits seem to want to fill. It also doesn't help the situation when you have people doing some very questionable things at these ghost towns. Considering they are totally abandoned and out of the way, ghost towns make for some pretty good places to have some covert meetings and deals go down. This one in Las Vegas, it's no different. Apparently a decent amount of criminal activity happens around here, with a lot of drug deals taking place here. Every now and again these deals can go sour, and usually that leaves a body. Murder and a gang presence aren't great things to sprinkle in when a town is already dealing with paranormal activity. For safety purposes, I recommend staying away from this town at all costs. Number 3 on this list is Westgate. So I am actually breaking the rules with this one a little bit because I think that you should definitely visit this place if you have the money. Thrillist says some Las Vegas residencies never quite end. Elvis Presley redefined what it meant to be a superstar entertainer in this town with more than 600 shows over 7 years at the International Hotel, which became the Las Vegas Hilton and is now the Westgate. The property continues to honor the king with a statue in the hotel lobby. Although Elvis passed away in Memphis, some believe his soul remains in Vegas with his ghost haunting the Westgate International Theater and a lavish rooftop villa the singer called home whenever he was in town. It's not cheap, but you can book the penthouse yourself. Just call the desk and ask for the Elvis suite. I don't care how creepy it may be or how scary he would look, but if there is an opportunity to see the ghost of Elvis, then that is absolutely something that I definitely want to cash in on. Imagine you pull up to your hotel room after a night of drinking and then you get to have a late night conversation with one of the greatest rock stars of all time ever. I don't think that Elvis would be the type of dude to hurt you or anything like that, even in ghost form. So as long as it's safe to do so, count me the heck in, dude. I want to go to Vegas and party with the ghost of Elvis. Number 2 on this list is Las Vegas Academy of the Arts. As somebody who graduated university for acting, and art school being haunted is just a tad bit triggering. Thrillist says the Las Vegas Academy of the Arts is a magnet school that specializes in music, theater, and other fine arts. Yet its legacy dates back to 1931 when it was known simply as Las Vegas High School, the first official high school in Las Vegas. The site has seen its share of renovations over the years, although 2 of its 3 original buildings remain on campus with their sturdy brick exteriors still in place. Generations of students have swapped stories about Mr. Petrie, a ghost that roams the hallways and haunts the school's theater. Some claim to hear strange noises or feel a chill, especially when rehearsals carry over to evening hours. So, who is Mr. Petrie? Some believe he was a former teacher. Others claim he owned a home that previously stood on the site of the school and burned down in a mysterious fire. Nobody knows for sure. All everyone does know is that Mr. Petrie is a menace. Let me tell you folks, acting is hard enough as it is without some creepy ghost causing problems for you mid-monologue. And apparently he likes to do that all the time. Many shows and performances have been ruined by Mr. Petrie, and the worst part about it is that he will only show himself to one person at a time sometimes. So the lead actor will be out there doing Hamlet and then all of a sudden see a ghost in front of him causing problems. The actor will naturally freak out and lose their mind, but no one else will see the ghost, they'll just see the actor on stage losing it. Which kinda makes the actor look like a bumbling idiot, but really they're getting attacked by some ghost. Try a different art school if you're looking for an artistic education. Number 1 on this list is Bally's. If Trivago or any other site like that tries to recommend you stay at Bally's, don't fall for it, guys. Thrillist says the worst fire in Nevada history tore through the old MGM Grand Hotel on November 21st, 1980. The blaze killed 87 people, mostly due to smoke inhalation, while helicopters rescued survivors from the roof. The property was eventually sold and renamed Bally's, while a new version of the MGM Grand reopened a few blocks south on the Strip. The tower engulfed in the fire is still part of the hotel, and guests sometimes claim to see unusual shadows in hallways, hear strange noises, and notice furniture that mysteriously moves in the rooms, especially on higher floors that saw the worst of the flames. Many believe the strange activity is caused by the spirits of those who didn't survive the tragedy. 87 people dying in a tragedy like that is always going to leave something terrible behind, and that's what we have here. 87 spirits are now restlessly floating around in purgatory at this place. They tried to remodel and change the name and forget everything that happened, but an incident like that cannot be forgotten. The people who died and their spirits, they can't be forgotten. They're still there to this day, haunting the place and trying to seek help. Many of the reports haven't talked about these ghosts being evil, but just being misunderstood and trying to get out of this place. They didn't ask to die in a fire, and they also didn't ask to be left in this purgatory place forever. I would imagine that they want to move on, they just don't know how to get free of this. Hopefully someone can figure out a way to save these souls and let them pass on for good.
Picking off the list at number 5, the Mission of San Miguel, 1610. The birthplace and historic site, the original San Miguel Church was most likely built shortly after the founding of Santa Fe in 1610 and is claimed to have been the first ever church built in America. Churches are already creaky and creepy, then this is the oldest one in the States? Okay, here we go. This church was built right across the Santa Fe River in the area referred to as the Barrio de Analco, which was inhabited mainly by the native population for the past 1,000 years. The San Miguel mission was first mentioned in writing in 1628, indicating it was in use at that point as both a mission and a school. Although intended as a mission, the Spanish also used it as their parish church until the parroquia was completed. The original San Miguel church was probably much smaller than the structure present, with more of a rectangular apse, a slightly raised sanctuary, and a simple front elevation with no towers at all. The surviving foundations were excavated and closely researched by Bruce Ellis and Stanley Stubbs in 1955. Although the present building dates from 1710, it has undergone a multitude of significant structural changes since its infamous riot in which partially destroyed the building during the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. This was an uprising of mostly the indigenous Pueblo peoples against the Spanish colonizers in Santa Fe de Nuevo Mexico. The Pueblo Revolt killed around 400 Spaniards and drove the remaining 2,000 settlers out of the province, which is where the creepy stuff kinda sits around. Since its construction, there have been over 300 years of ghostly apparitions seen at these ruins. You can never really pinpoint a specific person at this location, but there are numerous sightings that have been documented over the years, ranging from ghost horses, dragging sounds, and loud bangs resembling warfare. The San Miguel Chapel still stands after 400 years due to its local, national, and international community that has supported its preservation and history. Everybody chipping in. I love it. Little TLC. I bet you this is also where you see ghosts on different floors that used to be there or behind walls that don't even exist anymore. Like, are they bound by these structures forever? They're just like... No. Forever? Number 4, La Posada Hotel, 1882. Located at 330 East Palace Avenue in Santa Fe, New Mexico, La Posada Hotel is more than 100 years old, finishing construction in 1884. A lively and prominent spot for celebrities in town during the 1900s, it was originally built to be the home of Mr. Abraham and Mrs. Julia Stabb. Perfect last name for the start of something scary. Stabb. A prominent businessman and a German immigrant, Abraham had constructed this beautiful Grand French Second Empire estate ready to make a life working with his brother Zodak in business and eventually settling down in this historic town, with the mansion acting as a social hub for both the business and celebrity events. It is said that the Stabbs have 7 children, one of which died at birth, and which in fact led Miss Stabb to a depressed self-exile state, dying at the age of only 52. The mansion was converted into a hotel in 1936, shortly after the rubble of the Depression had cleared, and it is said that Julia herself haunts the rooms of La Posada Hotel. Guests have made claims to hear voices in vacant bedrooms, lights flickering on and off, and even doors slamming in the middle of the night. Voices saying things like, "I'm in here." It's never just like casual and calm, like, "Oh yeah, just leave the door open, I'm in here, come on in." It's always a creepy whisper in here, like, "I'm in here." Too creepy. La Posada Hotel Resort and Spa still remains one of New Mexico's most haunted hotels and is active and encourages overnighters to check out the Julia Stabb package, which involves a ghostly tour, history lesson of the grounds, a lovely dinner away from the kids, and a day done right by the pool or spa. Unfortunately, I won't be taking them up on the Stabb package at any time soon. Not at all. No chance. I hear one thing in the middle of the night and I'm out, and I'm up quickly. 12 seconds flat. I'm just like... Number 3, the Old State Penitentiary, 1885. The Old State is located 15 miles south of central Santa Fe and is an active men's maximum security prison that was built in 1885. Acting as a prison system for the US, the prison saw 3 massive riots in its entirety, including 1922, 1953, and the worst and most bloody riot of all, 1980. One of the worst prison riots in American history. It's presumed to be the reason behind its haunting reputation. On February 2nd, 1980, several inmates initiated a riot which led to the inmates gaining control over the prison for a full day and a half. Unfortunately at the time, post-70s, the prison was overcrowded, underfunded, and riddled with untrained, fresh-faced security guards with the rampant need for excess bodies due to the overgrowing inmate count. After escaping and organizing this event, the cellmates then tortured 12 prison guards and brutally murdered 33 other inmates. These riots soon became medieval in nature, gruesome, and truly evil. The most famous area for paranormal sightings can be heard and seen around cell block 4. Men here were brutally butchered, dismembered, decapitated, and some even hung up on the cells and burned alive. This section of the prison was closed in 1998 and is now referred to as Old Main. As if that history isn't dark enough, witnesses and researchers claim that there's a ton of spirits that roam this prison. Dark figures and ghostly shadows have been seen roaming the cells and halls, unexplainable slamming of cell doors, men's voices, strange noises, and even echoed screams can be heard at this location. This is why I don't even jaywalk, people. Stay a couple nights at this haunted prison looking at axe marks on the ground? Yeah, no, I'm getting my phone out right away. I know exactly who I'm gonna call. Yeah. Number 2, the Amador Hotel. Located at 251 West Amador Street at the corner of Water Street and Las Cruces, which translates to the Crosses, an area in New Mexico spanning as far back as the settled early 1800s, was thought to be an early mass gravesite for the amount of crosses present in the city. The Amador Hotel has stood serving the community in multiple ways over the years, including a courthouse, a post office, a bank, hotel, and even a county office center. Yeah, can I get 2 stamps, please? Thanks. Built in 1866, the Amador Hotel is a popular Las Cruces ghost tour, and some of the rooms were even used as jail cells. Hey, you're grounded for 15 years to life, I don't know. The courthouse was completed in 1885. Amador added another story to the remaining structure, and Amador Hall became a community center where people conversed in drinking and in storytelling. During tours, guests have reported seeing shadowy figures lurking in the hallways, numerous cold spots, flashlights turning on and off by themselves, and having their arms even touched or scratched. Oh yeah, that's it. Just a little to the left. That's perfect. Some even say it's the work of a little ghost girl named Annie, who frequently visits the room on the 2nd floor, giggling. Like, giggling is great and all until like a 200-year-old spirit giggles right in your face. Like, what is still funny? This is terrifying. Joke must have been that good. Little ghost girls? Yeah, that's the scariest ghosts imaginable. 100%. The Amador Hotel ghost tour starts at 8 p.m. and during a visit through the tour of the grounds, history and ghost hunting begins. I'm a strict matinee ghost hunter myself, only during the day, or never. Or like around brunch, that's like perfect, nice and sunny. And coming in at number 1, Double Eagle Restaurant. If you're heading down to Mesilla, New Mexico this weekend and enjoy burgers and ghost stories, well, then the Double Eagle Restaurant is a must stop for you. Known not only for the world's largest green pepper chili burger, this blast from the past decorated head to toe in its luxurious upscale Victorian decor is now the home to 2 prominent and active restaurants, the Double Eagle and Pepper's Cafe. Alright, here we go, let's dive in. Possibly the world's most haunted restaurants, originally owned by the Mace family, owning one of the leading and most lucrative import-export businesses in Santa Fe, was Senor and Senora Mace. Senora Mace expected only the best for her eldest son, Armando. Mothers and their sons, right? Always imaginarily wiping something off their faces. Come here, there's more. There is grim history here, involving 2 forbidden star-crossed lovers and a pair of sewing scissors. Thank you. The Double Eagle Restaurant is not only home for great food, beautifully handcrafted cocktails, but also home to a double homicide gruesome murder, in which these victims' souls would seem to be trapped within these walls forever. Armando, son and heir to his parents' business, falling head over heels in love with the family's household servant named Enos. Although Enos reciprocated such feelings about Armando, their relationship had to remain a secret due to Armando's mother's strict ordinance and the difference in the teenager's social and political positions. When Senora Mace discovered this relationship, she demanded that it end at once and banished Enos from her home indefinitely. It is said that one day Senora Mace came home, unexpectedly interrupting the lovers, mid-swoon, entranced by their love as she grabbed her sewing scissors from the basket on the patio and attacked Enos, stabbing and killing her. As she prepared to strike again, Armando, her son, threw his body in front of Enos and was stabbed instead. Yeah, that's some Romeo and Juliet stuff there, people. The murders were held in the famous Carlotta Salon Room, which can be visited at any time. A heavily requested stop where spooky goers can see a newspaper article titled Young Lover Ghosts on display, as well as an array of pictures taken of the young ghost lovers together over the years. That's terrifying. Here's the room, here's what happened, here's some proof. That's all I need to know. I've made my mind up. For never was a story of more woe than this of Enos and her Armando. And I tried to end on somewhat of a happy note. Love lasts forever, and that's what I'm taking from this. And coming in at number 5, we have the Houghton Mansion. Built in the 1890s in North Adams, Massachusetts, for the mayor himself, Albert Charles Houghton. This neoclassical revival-style mansion sits on 172 Church Street. A family man, Albert was the president of Arnold Print Works, a prominent textile factory in North Adams. His wife, Cordelia, daughter Mary, and himself had owned and lived on the property right up until the fatal car accident which took the lives of the family in 1914. On an early summer morning, Albert and his family, accompanied by another family, Dr. and Mrs. Dutton and their daughter, and of course the family chauffeur himself, Mr. Witters, had decided to head out into the countryside for a leisurely drive. A drive that ultimately took their lives. Unfortunately, for everyone on that August 1st morning, after a steep turn, the car lost control and proceeded to screech off the road, resulting in a rolling fatal wreck. All the women in this tragedy losing their lives, with the men barely surviving from the multitude of injuries. On August 11th, just 10 days after the accident, without his wife and daughter, Albert mysteriously died in the home from what doctors think was a broken heart. It is said that 3 ghosts haunt the Houghton Mansion, including Albert himself, Albert's daughter Mary, and the driver, Mr. Witters. The mansion remained with the Houghton family until 1926, when Albert's daughter Florence and her husband sold the building to the Freemasons. This is when the spookiness really started happening. Through its multitude of use throughout the years, additions to this historic site were added on by the Masons, using it for ritual and spiritual purposes, making this story even weirder. Over the years, there have been countless paranormal witnesses claiming that the ghosts roaming the halls of the basement, Mr. Witters himself, guilt-ridden with the responsibility of the crash, and Mr. Witters took his own life shortly after returning home with injuries, and residents that have stayed at the site have claimed that the manly figure aimlessly rummaging through the basement is the driver himself. Among these claims have another spirit lurking in Mary's bedroom. It is said that overnighters have witnessed multiple bright lights and auras flying around the bedroom in the middle of the night. I wouldn't even step foot into this house, let alone set up camp and spend the night. No way. The Houghton Mansion remains a tourist attraction and hotspot for paranormal goers worldwide, and to this day is one of the most haunted and mysterious sites in all of Massachusetts. Number 4. The Hoosick Tunnel. The Hoosick Tunnel, from the Algonquin word place of stones and the Mohawk word forbidden, is a 4.75-mile active railroad tunnel in western Massachusetts that passes through the Hoosick Range, an extension of Vermont's Green Mountains, and runs from Deerfield River in the town of Florida to the city of North Adams. The construction began in 1815 and ending in 1875 with a budget of $2 million, at the time the largest tunnel ever constructed, and it was later the result of taking lives of over 200 men during its construction entirety, earning it the nickname from locals, the Bloody Pit. This haunted, barren, 5-mile, completely enclosed stretch was subject to multiple accidents and deaths over the years, giving the tunnel its haunting history and reputation of being cursed itself. With the word forbidden, did the Mohawks know something that the workers didn't? Essentially, this cold, underground, pitch-black hole became one of America's strangest grave sites, resulting in everything from mysterious gas leaks, dynamite explosions, roofs collapsing, and even mechanic failures resulting in a mass flood. For the past decades, there have been numerous paranormal activity witnesses who have documented strange events, from police officers to the freight conductors themselves. Some of the reports over the last 100 years included numerous farmers and wagons ending up in different areas of the railroad, missing hours of time. The farmers had claimed that when spending time around the railroad and its tracks, that memory and confusion would always set in. Some residents have claimed that they have even been chased out of the tunnel by an unexpected freight train chugging along aggressively through the tunnel like a bat out of hell, and then vanishing. Numerous ghostly figures resembling workers roam the dark tunnel, and if that isn't scary enough, some people, including hearing the echoes and screams of even the workers who were buried alive under the rock, still holding their tools, or even seeing ghostly figures in pumping chambers where numerous men tirelessly making rafts not to drown. The Hoosick Tunnel remains one of the most visited and haunted places, marking it just one of the sites you'll probably never find me at. Just in 2020, the tunnel was yet again subject to a mysterious collapse, resulting in months of repair. Yeah, I say stop fixing it and just let it be. Number 3. The USS Salem. Planes, trains, and automobiles. Well, almost. A big boat. The USS Salem, a heavy cruiser built for World War II in 1945, was originally built for action. Its bold, aggressive architecture was one of the last, as it was more of a bluff to its opponents than actually a hero of war. In May 1949, War Departments handed the Salem's helm to Captain J.C. Daniel himself. The ship was built and updated with what was then the latest military tech and weapons, and it was meant to strike fear in whomever or whatever was in her way. Although the ship wasn't used in any action during World War II, it acted as a flagship, training operation, and main purpose as a threat to the naval enemy. It wasn't until the USS Salem had responded to the 1953 Ionian earthquake, or also known as the Great Kefalonia earthquake, as it hit the southern Ionian islands of Greece on August 12th, devastating the entire area. The USS Salem landed on Greek shores and acted as an improvised hospital and morgue, giving it its famous name, the Sea Witch. The ship was decommissioned shortly after its rescue and lays in Boston's harbor as a tourist attraction from all of its dark history. Some of the paranormal activities that arise on the ship include the Burning Man, who smells of rank death and can be seen in the mess hall where the bodies have been stored. Another famous apparition on the ship is the ghost girls who lurk the halls of the ship. Little ghostly figures can be seen and felt on the legs of tour goers. Some people claim that the ship is even home to hellhounds, an aggressive pack of ghostly creatures that roam the ship growling and scratching at closed doors. Yeah, the next time my dog scratches at my door, she's going up for adoption, I'm sorry. Number 2, the Lizzie Borden House. This quaint bed and breakfast located at 230 2nd Street is home to one of America's most haunted and mysterious homes. The Lizzie Borden House gets its haunt from an unsolved murder of Lizzie Borden in 1892. One of the most infamous true crime figures known for her murdering of her father and stepmother with several blows to the head with a hatchet. Oof, ouch. Although acquitted, the killings remain unsolved to this day. This case earned notoriety, and much that the popular local children's rhyme had been linked to this death. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. That is horrible. On August 4th, 1892, Lizzie's stepmother of 27 was struck 19 times while her father Andrew was hit 11. Although Lizzie Borden was acquitted and found not guilty, the dark history draws in crowds every night for its nightly tour of the premises. The Lizzie Borden room, the infamous room where all of the murders took place, is the most requested and most popular for paranormal overnighters. And not only can you enjoy a lovely inclusive breakfast to yourself, but the nightly house tour, ghost tour, and ghost hunt attracts fans of horror every night of the year. Yeah, that's terrifying. And there's a jingle to it. I don't like that at all. And coming in at number 1, the Salem Witch Trials. We can't talk about haunted places in Massachusetts if we're not going to bring up the witch trials. And I'm not talking about Sabrina the Teenage Witches, or anything of cute of that nature. These famously documented witch trials need no introduction, and unfortunately lays way to one of the most horrific events based in truth. The site of mass hysteria and hangings of supposed witches took place here and occurred in colonial Massachusetts between 1692 and 1693. More than 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft, or better known back then as the devil's magic, and 20 were ultimately executed. Eventually, the colony admitted the trials were a mistake and compensated the families of those convicted. Okay, yeah, sorry. I just thought when you sneezed, you didn't say bless you, so I already don't like you, so I figured you were a witch. I'm really sorry. Since then, the story of the trials has become famous in paranoia and injustice, and it continues to baffle researchers to this day. We all know the famous play written by American playwright Arthur Miller in 1953, The Crucible, depicting the mass hysteria and drama during these trials. This was the perfect time if you didn't like someone that a strategic and untimely sinister accusation led to the demise of thy neighbor. I saw Sarah Good with the devil. I saw Goody Osborne with the devil. Who else don't I like? I saw Bridget Bishop with the devil. Abigail. End of Act 1. Since the start of the trials and hysteria in North America, other European countries shortly followed with their own mass witch hunts, resulting in somewhere between 40,000 and 60,000 tried and executed for witchcraft. That's a lot of broomsticks. The Salem witch trials of Salem, Massachusetts is still one of the world's biggest hotspots for mystery and paranormal story.
Number 5 on this list is the Molly Brown house. If you live in Denver, then there is no way that you aren't familiar with this haunted place. Thrillist says you've no doubt heard of the Molly Brown house and likely passed it on the street once or twice too. Molly Brown was a notable member of Denver's elite and perhaps known best for being a Titanic survivor, and despite allegedly living a relatively happy life, visitors to the museum and staff have reported quite a bit of strange happenings. Some have smelled what's believed to be husband J.J. Brown's pipe, or have witnessed lights off and on the fritz, and staff have reported furniture being seemingly rearranged. Sometimes figures can even be seen roaming the house. A visit is worth it alone for the history, but the potential for getting a bit spooked or walking into a cold spot is definitely an added bonus. We once again have one of those locations where no one has any idea why it's haunted, it just is. Maybe it's the connection to the Titanic that has got this place acting funky. Obviously, that was a very unnatural occurrence and took the lives of tons of people in a very sad way. So I could believe that the Titanic and the survivor of the Titanic plays some role into why this place is haunted the way that it is. Good news is that this isn't the worst haunting that you can run into. Like, yes, you will get a little scared for sure. You might smell something funny, or have a ghost pull something on you, or even maybe have small valuables go missing. But ultimately, you probably shouldn't be dragged to the underworld here by some shadow demon or anything like that. So I guess if you were to visit any place on this list, then this one wouldn't be the worst. Just be prepared for what's coming, because if you aren't, then it could leave you with some serious mental trauma. Number 4 on this list is Phantom Canyon Road. You need to be very careful on this road because there is a good chance you could suffer a serious crash if you aren't. Thrillist says a haunted road is one thing, but a haunted road in Colorado means you're likely on the edge of a mountain and at some serious elevation. Phantom Canyon Road is a detour off the Gold Belt Tour byway connecting Cripple Creek and Florence, and was originally the railroad for that route. As you drive along, you can clearly see the ghost towns of Wilbur, Adelaide, and Glenbrook, and legend has it that the reason for Phantom Canyon's name is credited to sightings of a man wearing a prison uniform walking along the tracks in the 1890s. The man supposedly had been executed at the Colorado State Penitentiary a few days earlier. So yeah guys, you better have your wits about you, because if you don't, this ghost might come out and startle the crap out of you, and then the next thing you know, you're gonna be face deep into a tree somewhere. It also just adds to the horror ambiance that you're driving past several ghost towns along the way. Like, of course, they just had to be on the side of the road as you're also getting stalked by this ghost prisoner. No one really knows what this prisoner wants with you, but let's face it, I can't imagine it's good. My dude was executed back in the day, so for one, what he did was probably pretty bad to warrant a punishment like that, and then secondly, he literally got executed, and I can only guess that his ghost probably isn't too pleased about that. Y'all need to be especially careful if you're driving down this road, because at any point this guy could pop out. Number 3 on this list is Central City Masonic Cemetery. Of course we had to have a cemetery on this list. No haunted place list would be complete without at least one of them. Thrillist says, founded as a mining town in the late 1800s, Central City is now known as a destination for those looking to head to the hills for a gambling fix in the casinos that now dot the area. But one thing hasn't changed. The woman in black who twice a year appears in this hilltop cemetery above the town. Known as the Columbine Lady, she comes to visit the grave of John Cameron, a prominent former resident of Central City who died in 1884. Some believe she is his fiancée, appearing to leave flowers for her lost love on November 1st, the anniversary of Cameron's death death, and April 5th, a date for which the significance remains a mystery, much like the woman herself. This place is safe to go to if, of course, you do not go during these times. She's been coming for a long time, and anyone who tried to interfere with her has had to pay the price. Now, people kind of suspect that she was in a relationship with John Cameron, but there's also another theory. Many people think that John actually wronged her in his life, and that this woman in black comes twice a year to double check that John is still dead and hasn't come back to life by some means. Pretty scary tale for sure, one that you probably don't want to get involved with. Number 2 on this list is the Broadmoor. Located in Colorado Springs, this hotel would be freaking awesome if it wasn't so haunted. Thrillist says this sprawling 5-star hotel has a lot to offer for anyone seeking a relaxing and indulgent getaway. But along with the golf course, spa, and nearby zoo, there's one feature you won't find in any brochure. Staff and guests alike have reported the presence of a woman, often in the penthouse where Julia Penrose, co-founder of the property, once lived. While not confirmed, Penrose's death is said to have been surrounded by a strange occurrence in which she went missing and was later found, confused and shaking in the woods nearby with no memory of how she got there. She passed away a week later, and perhaps her spirit remains, watching over the property and seeking answers about her own mysterious death. Now I am wondering, man, how did Penrose die? Like, this whole story feels like a movie or something like that. I truly think somebody needs to get in here and investigate what the heck happened here. Because, like, should we be scared of the region because this is gonna happen again? Was Julia doing something specific before she disappeared, and should we avoid doing that thing? There are just so many questions that need to be answered here, and sadly I can't do it from the comfort of Toronto. That being said, I'm also not trying to end up like Julia, and therefore will be leaving this job to somebody far more qualified. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Highlands Ranch Mansion. A truly picturesque mansion, one that's been standing for over 100 years and one that's home to a ghostly spirit. Thrillist says this sprawling stone mansion, built in 1891, is often rented for weddings and events due to its impressive structural beauty and picturesque prairie views. But it's also a historic property and somewhat of a museum of the times, with a bit of paranormal activity sprinkled in. The ghost of Julia Kistler, daughter of F. Kistler, who bought the property in 1926, is said to haunt the home, with visitors and staff alike reporting hearing a woman's sobs, seeing a silhouette figure moving about when the mansion was otherwise vacant, and lights sporadically turning on and off. I don't know about you guys, but during my wedding ceremony, I want to hear beautiful sounding music, not the sobs of some ghost woman thing. Apparently she's crying all the time, and this woman's emotions are not something to play with. There's a story where once several children were playing around here. There was a wedding ceremony scheduled here for later that day, and the children were off doing what kids do before the proceedings got underway. They ran into this ghost crying, and then they started to make fun of her. They were rude and definitely unkind, but they also didn't deserve what she did next. It's said that in a fit of rage, she flew inside their bodies and possessed each and every one of them for a short time, showing them things that were truly terrifying. Things that have ultimately changed those boys' lives and altered their mentality forever. Any ghost that's capable of doing something like that, that's one that I don't want to be around. Number 5 on this list is Point Pleasant. Now, I feel like most of you have probably heard of this one before, but Mothman. Wikipedia says, in West Virginia folklore, the Mothman is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 15th, 1966 to December 15th, 1967. The first newspaper report was published in the Point Pleasant Register, dated November 16th, 1966, titled, "Couple See Man-Sized Bird, Creature Something." The national press soon picked up the reports and helped spread the story across the United States. Since that first sighting, Mothman has been seen hundreds of times over. And let me just be clear that this isn't something that you want to run into. Cryptid Wiki says Mothman is described as a bipedal, winged humanoid. Despite his name, which was given to him by newspapers, he is in no way moth-like and has an appearance more like that of a large humanoid owl. His coloration varies from black, gray, to even brown, although it's usually the darker shades. He's often reported to be about 7 feet tall, with a wingspan of about 10 to 15 feet or more, plus the ability to fly over 100 miles per hour. Anyone who gets a close look at the Mothman seems to suffer from extreme fear and psychological distress, sometimes lasting for months or years afterwards. In particular, people say that a sense of pure evil overcomes them when they see Mothman's eyes. Just because people have seen this thing before and lived to tell about it doesn't mean that you will too. I bet there are tons of people who have seen it and then that's it, game over. Going to Point Pleasant runs the real risk that you might disappear. Number 4 on this list is the West Virginia Penitentiary. This is one of the most haunted prisons in the United States, and it's for good reason. Now, not only is this prison deeply haunted right now, but you might run the very risk of disappearing if you were to go there. I should also note that when it was functional and operating as a prison, a lot of inmates would actually disappear as well. Over 1,000 men died at this prison. This is a large reason why it's haunted to this day. They died from hanging, from riots, from taking their own life. This prison saw tons of atrocities, and it was a horrible place while it was operating, and is still a horrible place even now that it's shut down. One of the reasons this prison was destined for failure is because they decided to build the damn thing on some ancient burial grounds. I don't know how many times we need to go over this, but guys, let's stop building stuff on burial grounds. Seriously, like, it's not cool to those people, and it's also just not gonna make for a good place. I can literally guarantee it. All the death that has happened on this place has left its mark. The Travel Channel says, though the prisoners are gone, they're not forgotten, and by many accounts, the ghosts of some of the 998 men who died here still roam free. There's a shadow man that has been seen and even photographed. Staff of the prison have been accosted by unseen forces. Strange noises still echo throughout the cell blocks, and something dark lurks in the bowels of the building. Stay away from this prison at all costs, folks. Number 3 on this list is Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. This has made our list before when it comes to haunted and abandoned amusement parks. What was supposed to be an area of fun and joy is now just a scary place where you might just get taken. Wide Open Country says, when Conley Snitto first showed up with the dreams of building a carnival back in the 1920s, he had no idea about the bloody history of the land itself. It all started in the late 1700s when Mitchell Clay and his family were the first to settle in Mercer County. Mitchell and his wife Phoebe had 14 children together and settled on their 800-acre farm. Tragedy struck the first time when members of the local Shawnee Native American tribe two of the Clay children, Bartley and Tabitha, while they were working on their daily chores. After Mitchell killed some of the Native Americans in retaliation, the Clay family and their property would never be the same. Fast forward to the 20s when Conley Snitto is working on his park with no knowledge that it's actually a burial ground. He funded the Ferris wheel swing rides, a dance hall, and even a swimming pool. But the haunted history of the area started to catch up with the park and strange things began happening. A young girl passed away while riding the swings, and a little boy drowned in addition to 4 other deaths. By the 60s, the park became an abandoned place that seemed doomed. In the 80s, Gaylord White purchased the property in hopes of building new neighborhoods. But after they started getting into the land, they realized that there was more buried than just the Clay family. It was an ancient Native American burial ground that experts believe long predates the Clays, as well as Native American artifacts. White decided not to mess with that kind of history and allowed the amusement park to rust over, now looking as haunted as its past. Needless to say, this park has had quite the history around it, and now it is a hotspot for everything paranormal. If you want to disappear, then there might not be a better spot in the country to go to than Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Number 2 on this list is the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. One of the scariest and most haunted asylums in the world here, guys. West Virginia Tourism says, located in Weston, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum was a sanctuary for the mentally ill up until 1994. This National Historic Landmark was once an important military post in the Civil War. It was originally built to hold about 250 patients, but during its peak it held 2,400 patients in poor conditions. Ghost experts have flocked here to experience the paranormal for themselves. They've heard blood-curdling screams and seen mysterious shadowy figures. Many say the souls of the insane have never left the halls they once called home. These shadow figures are dangerous too, folks. People have been attacked here and it's been pretty bad. The spirits that live here, there really is nothing human about them anymore. All humanity has left these creatures and now they resemble more of a Dementor from Harry Potter than anything even remotely from this planet. If you go to this asylum, then your disappearance is a very real possibility. And trust me, having one of these things take you, it wouldn't be a good time for anyone. And finally, number 1 on this list is Braxton County. It feels weird just blocking off an entire county, but if you're trying to stay safe and not disappear on us, then you might have to do that. West Virginia Tourism says, on one fall night in 1952, a UFO fell from the sky and landed here in West Virginia. What happened next has been highly contradicted. A group of local children and neighbors went to where the UFO fell and found a mysterious being, with shiny eyes and a round red face, cloaked in a green drape-like material. The later dubbed Flatwoods Monster hissed at the group and disappeared. The witnesses also reported a pungent smell that made them feel nauseous. The following day, when investigators inspected the site, they found skid marks and an odd, gummy deposit, but no strange smell. So for all we know, there is still some alien creature just running around these parts and doing whatever it wants. That's really not a reassuring thought here, folks, and not something that I think that we should be okay with. Like, I feel as if this kind of needs to be addressed by the American government or something like that. I guess it's possible that they have conducted an operation to catch this thing and we just don't know about it. Either way, until we have definitive proof that this thing is gone for good, I'd avoid Braxton County altogether. Number 5 on this list is Villa Paula. This haunted place is located in Miami and has quite the interesting guest in the backyard. Thrillist says, this stately white mansion was originally constructed as the Cuban consulate in the mid-1920s, home to Consul Domingo Millard and his wife, Paula. The Cuban-born Paula was known to spend her days playing piano and drinking Cuban coffee until she died from complications from a leg amputation in 1932. Legend has it that Domingo interred his late wife in a sarcophagus laid in the backyard. The sarcophagus is still there now, covered by ficus tree roots and nearly impossible to reach. Whether or not it actually contains her mortal remains is debatable at best, but reports of her ghost persist. It's said her ghost is in different rooms there, says History Miami's Dr. Paul George. People who've lived at Villa Paula since have had existential kinds of experiences. Among them, phantom coffee smells and piano playing, a one-legged woman roaming about as well. So there is a literal sarcophagus just chilling in this person's backyard. Can you imagine having that just show up on the house listing? I'd be like, no, we are not okay with that. I'm kind of surprised that no one has gone to go deal with the sarcophagus before. I mean, you can't just leave this thing down there like that and expect the ghost to just go away. I would imagine that Paula's spirit is probably tied to the sarcophagus and in turn it's tied to the area. Granted, I do kind of understand why no one wants to dig it up. Think about all the crazy stuff that's happened with the pyramids. You dig up this sarcophagus and you might end up being cursed for life, which is obviously something that nobody wants. But now we're left in this awkward place where we can't get rid of the ghost, but at the same time can't live here either. That's why I'm recommending to all of you watching, just avoid Villa Paula altogether. Number 4 on this list is the Blue Anchor Pub. So this is an interesting one because this pub didn't actually start in Florida. Thrillist says this pub was built in 1840s London during Jack the Ripper times, so it should be no surprise that it it's haunted. The story goes that the bar was raised in London, but its wooden interiors were sent to New York City and then onto this sleepy Florida town in 1996. Little did anyone know that the pub's original elements came with the ghost of Bertha Starkley, a cheating wife who was murdered by her husband. Today, she can be heard rattling pots, knocking things over, and wailing in the middle of the night at the Blue Anchor. Every night around 10 p.m., the time that she was murdered, Bertha likes to remind everyone she's still here, so the current owners ring the ship's bell to scare her away. So, first thing, I've never actually heard of that before, where they take a building from one continent and then just decide to move it over to another continent. This bar must look pretty cool on the inside to go to all that trouble though. Obviously this was a bit of a mistake and everyone would have been better served if we relocated this thing straight to the dump. Bertha doesn't care if it's in London or America or anywhere. As long as the structure of this pub is still intact, her ghost will still be floating around, which makes it very hard to enjoy a night out at this place. Like imagine drowning several pints, going to take a piss, and then getting ambushed by some 1800s ghost in the bathroom with your pee-pee hanging out. Like, I don't know if I'd ever be able to recover from that, folks. Number 3 on this list is St. Augustine's Lighthouse. Ah yes, the haunted lighthouse, a true classic. Thrillist says St. Augustine's iconic lighthouse is a Florida landmark built in 1874. But climb up its 219 steps, and it's not just the views that will take your breath away. First, there's the ghost of Joseph Andrew, the original lighthouse keeper who fell to his death while painting the 165-foot tower. Then there are the Pity's two daughters who were playing with a building cart when it broke loose and slid into the nearby bay, drowning them both. While the girls giggle and run up and down the lighthouse steps, Joseph has been reported smoking cigars at the top of the lighthouse, keeping watch over his forever home. You know guys, if I had to be a ghost, then being Joseph wouldn't be the worst. I get to look out at the pretty scenery at the top of my lighthouse where hardly anyone bothers me, and I get to smoke cigars all day. Like, obviously I wouldn't want to be a ghost, but if I had to be, then this wouldn't be that bad. Either way, I'm not a ghost now. I am very much a human being, and if I want to stay a human being, then I recommend avoiding this place. It can obviously be very jarring to see two little ghost girls running around, and even though all of these ghosts are supposed to be pretty chill, we know that the paranormal can be unpredictable. I'm sure that there are tons of other non-haunted Florida lighthouses around if you're really pining for a good view. Number 2 on this list is Fort East Martello. If you don't like dolls, then you really won't like this one, guys. Thrillist says, if there is one rule all Floridians follow, it's do not mess with Robert the doll. The 4-foot figurine has terrorized anyone who hasn't taken him seriously since he was gifted to artist Robert Jean Otto in 1904. Otto blamed any mischievous act around him on Robert the doll, effectively coining the oft-repeated Robert did it mantra. The doll currently holds court inside Fort East Martello, where he lives inside a glass case surrounded by a constant soundtrack of haunting xylophone music. The room evokes a heavy air immediately upon entering, and the walls are papered with apology notes from cocky tourists who've dared cross the world's most haunted plaything. Even the Prince of Darkness himself, Ozzy Osbourne, felt Robert's wrath when he suffered a series of health mishaps shortly after dissing the doll on his reality show. I don't like dolls, folks, especially the haunted variety, so this entry obviously had to make the list. Clearly it curses you after you see it because people literally have to come back here and ask for its forgiveness. I don't know if the notes work or not, lot, but I guess that's all you can do when you're dealing with a haunted doll. Hopefully this doll can just chill out and stop haunting people, but in the meantime, I just flat out avoid going to this place in Florida altogether. And number 1 on this list is Casa Monica Resort and Spa. It really sucks that this place is so haunted because it's truly beautiful. Thrillist says St. Augustine's fanciest hotel is also its most haunted. In fact, this 5-star Mediterranean revival haunt is a hotbed of spectral activity. Children are heard running along the 4th floor, but no one is there. The radio in the Ponce de Leon suite randomly comes on, but no one's there. Guests of room 411 wake up to people staring at them, but no one's there. But it's the 3-story Flagler suite high in the tower that's most haunted. Maids have seen a child's handprint appear on the 1st floor bathroom mirror, and after knocking, one heard a man say, "We've been expecting you," from an empty bedroom. Its spookiest claim to fame, however, is the male ghost staring out of the top tower window. He's believed to be the ghost of one of 2 people, either Franklin Smith, the architect who built the hotel, or Henry Flagler, the man who purchased it. I personally don't care if it's the architect, the man who purchased it, or God. Anyone who says, "I've been waiting for you as I enter an empty bedroom," it's not the type of individual I want to be around. Also, where are these children coming from and what are those sounds? Okay, so you want to tell me a scary story where the architect of the building fell in love with his work and then when he died, his ghost stayed here. Alright, fine, I can buy that, I can believe that, but like, what are the children doing here? What do they have to do with this place and the architect? Maybe this is just one of those spots where it doesn't matter what happened here, it doesn't matter what will happen here in the future, it's just always destined to be haunted.